Welcome to the hearing today. I see we are missing some Senate members, though we do have a quorum. I think, okay. We have some joining right now, so. All right. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. The State Government Policy, Finance, and Elections Committee. And we have a very full agenda today, and looking forward to the opportunity to have two very interesting bills in front of us. We also have testifiers, quite a nice long list of testifiers. And so I appreciate your time, and remember, and by the way, when we do a voice vote, I'm just going to give you time to take yourself off mute, and we're just going to do a voice call. No other hand signs or anything, just a voice call, just to let you know. All right, and with that, I will move Senate File 2 for our first bill on the agenda. Senator Carla Nelson is the author, and Senator Nelson, I'm trying to find you on my... Okay.
I see my name is listed as Taxes Committee. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Senator.
We just changed it. Yeah. Welcome, Senator Nelson. Go ahead and present your bill, Senator Nelson.
Oh, thank you so much, Madam Chair, for hearing Senate File 2. I do want to, I have an author's amendment, Madam Chair, and it is a technical amendment that Ms. James sent us. And if I could incorporate that into the bill, please.
Yes, absolutely, Senator Nelson. And so, members, I will move Senate File, I'll move the A1 amendment to Senate File 2. And it is technical language that was given to Senator Nelson by Ms. James, inserting, Senator Nelson, was this amendment given, or Ms. James given to the committee ahead of time?
I believe it was, Madam Chair, but with our distance type hearings, I'm not sure.
That's why I'm asking. Yes, I'm asking staff, Senator Nelson. It's been posted, Senator Nelson. Okay, so it is available to the members and to anybody else as well. So with that, I'll renew my motion to for the A1 amendment to Senate File 2. Everybody please unmute. Members. Senator Fateh, you're still muted. Okay, there you go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails, and the A1 amendment is adopted to Senate File 2. Thank you very much, Senator Nelson. And with that, you can go ahead and present your bill, Senate File 2, as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate File 2 simply removes the ability of the governor to use emergency powers to close our schools. It's just a very narrow improvement to Chapter 12, and it puts I believe the decision making where it should be, which is the locally elected school boards. We do have Ms. James is welcome to walk through the bill summary. It's pretty straightforward, but if she'd like to do that, then I just have a couple comments and some testifiers, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Nelson. Ms. James, if you go ahead.
Madam Chair and members, I'm happy to do this. I think Senator Nelson covered the high points. This bill precludes the governor from relying on his emergency powers under Chapter 12 to alter the school schedules, school activities, or to order schools closed. And then the application of this bill is to elementary schools, middle schools, secondary schools, vocational center schools, charter schools, and elementary schools that enroll pre-kindergarten pupils in district programs. This also precludes the governor from relying on his emergency powers to preclude students from entering the building for typical activities. It does permit the governor to advise and consult with school leaders regarding actions needed for emergency management for schools.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James. Senator Nelson, that is your bill, and then we also have testifiers here today. If you
Yes.
want to go ahead with your
Yes.
testifiers.
Could I make just a couple comments to?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that this issue is not new to any Minnesotan. There has been great consternation and concern about the closure of our public schools for in-person student learning. And as the chair of the Education Policy and Finance Committee last year, I heard from superintendents, board members, parents from all over the state about the inability of a one-size-fits-all solution determined in St. Paul, that it would at all be appropriate for a very diverse state with very diverse school districts, their needs, their ability to mitigate risks. And that's what the genesis of this bill is. I'll just touch on a couple brief parts. Number one, we need to do this for student health. The American Academy of Pediatrics has encouraged having students present in school. And in fact, we've seen increases in failures. I had a first grade teacher call me 2 nights ago to say for the first time in her teaching career, 75% of her first graders do not know their letters. These are kids that kindergarten ended on March 13th, and many had not been back in school since. So we need to do it for the sake of our students and for their health. I'll quote one element from Dr. I can't hardly say his name, Bachara from Stanford University. And I think this should cement in every one of our minds why this is so essential. He talked about the many reasons, many things, students now starving, not having the food that they need, all types of things, the academic failures. But this piece really is like a searing iron. Mental health problems are in a way the most shocking thing that we have seen with the closures of our schools. In June, a CDC survey found that 1 in 4 young students or young adults between the ages of 18 and 24 had seriously considered suicide. Human beings are not, after all, designed to live alone, and we're meant to be in company with one another. So it's really unsurprising that the lockdowns have had this psychological effect. And it's been especially hard for young adults and children who have been denied much of the needed socialization. We also know that we need to allow schools to open under local jurisdiction for the health of others. What we have found, and in other countries where they have reopened schools, students seem to play a much smaller role in driving the spread of the disease than would be expected. That was in the New York Times. And then for the sake of economic stability, I know, Madam Chair, you have worked on this a lot, and that is the impact that this has on parents who have their children at home. And according to the Brookings Institute, parents with minor children comprise about 1/3 of our country's workforce, 1/3. And any economic recovery will rely on their continued participation or reentry into the labor force. And the status of schools and childcare programs will dictate the ability of working parents to fully return to work. And therefore, they will also largely dictate the speed and robustness of our economic recovery. And of course, parents are wanting their kids back in school. And then finally, our highest order, the Constitution. The Constitution requires, Article 8, Section 1 of our state constitution says that it is the responsibility of the legislature to secure a thorough and efficient system of public schools throughout the state. And the governor's actions are really impeding this education. We know schools are essential. Many of you have heard me as I was chair of the Education Committee. Education is the great equalizer. The moral issue of our day, the economic issue of our day, the racial issue of our day. And we must not allow unnecessary closures to continue. We need to return those to the locally elected school officials. And then there's been a lot of complaints about distance learning. We will not go over those. But Madam Chair, I do have a few testifiers, if I might be able to bring them before you. The first one, Madam Chair, I believe these are all parents. And if we could hear from Kofi Monska, and perhaps, Madam Chair, I may have mispronounced the name, but we're sure that Kofi will be able to correct us.
Yes, it's coffee. And I have a timer.
Let me just a moment. Because we have parent testifiers, I just want to talk a little bit about the rules of the committee hearing, even then we're on Zoom. So to avoid chaos, wait for me to introduce you, call on you, and ask and go ahead and speak. And this is true for all those testifiers. And I know you're eager to share, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, but I just want to explain that. So, all right, with that, Ms. Monska, would you go ahead and present your testimony?
Yes, hi. I have a timer going, so I'll try to keep to my 4 minutes here. So my name is Coffee Monska. I live in Shoreview with my husband and my 3 boys who are 13, 15, and 16. My 16-year-old boy has a severe disability where he's 16, but he's still in diapers, and he's kind of like a 3-year-old. He speaks in short sentences. My husband and I both work full-time. One of the echoing themes that I've heard from parents and that I personally feel is powerlessness, which can be echoed from Senator Nelson's testimony about, I have friends, kids who have tried to commit suicide. They've had to have emergency services come in since this. 2 people I know of, just in my immediate circle. The ability to work is really difficult. And so as far as the powerlessness, I'll give just a few examples from yesterday. Yesterday, I was a puddle of tears, which has happened numerous times during distance learning, but just yesterday, so Monday night at 8 p.m., I got an email from the school saying my kid with a disability wouldn't be able to come to school the next day, and he wouldn't be able to come indefinitely because there'd been a COVID exposure. So I'm sitting there, my husband and I both work full time, trying to figure out how am I going to get childcare for him indefinitely now because school is just closed. This is not the first time it's happened. Last time it was 5 minutes before the bus was supposed to come pick him up. And so it's just been really hard to live life this way. With all of the unknowns. Another example was for my kid who's in junior high. The teacher said he's going to have a big history test. And she said, but we should help our kids study. And I was very thankful that she did that. That was really great of her. But she said I was going to have to sift through Schoology, the school app, to figure out how to help him. And I just said, you mentioned their study guides. Can you please email them to me? And she said that was going to be too difficult to just send the attachment to me. And I should just sift through the school app. So that was another thing that blew my mind and made me upset when I was already have been crying all day. And then the other thing was my other kid's in high school and he needs a tutor to get through math. And the school told me yesterday, I begged from the principal, the teacher, and his counselor that there's no in-person tutoring. No matter how badly a kid is struggling, they will not tutor the student, except you can have a National Honor Society student tutor them through the computer, but it's Algebra 2. It's a lot of graphing, and he needs someone to sit next to him and do that. And the school is refusing. These same people who proclaim they care so much about equity and kids and whatever, they're not willing to help my kid learn. And their only solution was for him to skip the class or to fail it and just retake it. So he would lose a whole year of math due to distance learning. So now I'm going to hire a tutor. I've already hired one and scheduled them to come this week, but I shouldn't have to do that to supplement school, to replace school, only to supplement it, not to actually replace in-person learning. And I feel bad for all the parents who can't afford it, and kids are falling through the cracks. I think that the governor should not have the power, the emergency power, education included in his emergency powers, because I think the power needs to be more on a local level. I've heard parents, my special needs group of parents, joke about banging on his door and pleading and begging. I know parents have had Thanksgiving dinner on his lawn just begging him. And I think that if it were the power more on a local level, we could make a phone call, we could attend school board building meetings, we could join the school board. I think that there would just be more access to help contribute to these decisions. School boards are less influenced by powerful lobbyists money, like teachers unions and things like that. They're less influenced. So I think that would be good. There's more power in your local vote when you're voting on a local level versus just voting for the governor, and which is only every 4 years. And I think parents can be a part of creative solutions. In Wisconsin, they haven't closed their schools or businesses. And if you look on the news every night, you'll see their COVID numbers aren't much different than ours. There's ways to think of creative solutions, and parents can be a part of that if they're allowed to open. And just in conclusion, everyone will say to me, which is my favorite statement, we are in a global pandemic. Did you know that, Miss Coffee? Did you know that? Yeah, I know that. You lost your mind? Of course I know that. It doesn't change anything. Would it change? What I do know is that there are new strains of the virus and that this might be around forever, and that we have to figure out a way for our society to function during this global pandemic, which will last indefinitely. And it's very anxiety producing to know all the power lies in the governor's hands, and that at any moment he could just snatch education away from my kids, my ability to work and earn a living away from my kids. It needs to be at a more local level where we can actually call up the school, like my kid's school, I'm going to call up and ask them to think of more creative solutions to the problem. So that's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for listening to parents.
Absolutely. Listening to parents, that is a very important voice. Parent voices in regards to the matters of their children. So absolutely. Senator Nelson, I think the next testifier you have is Ms. Sauser. Okay. Ms. Sauser, welcome to the committee. Glad to have you here. And you can go ahead and present your testimony, Ms. Sauser.
Good morning, Chair Kiffmeyer and committee members. My name is Melissa Saucer. I serve on the Farmington School Board, the Intermediate 917 School Board, and I'm a former member of the Minnesota School Boards Association Board of Directors Executive Committee. But today I'm speaking with my experience through those boards, as well as my experience as what's most important as a parent. I am grateful that in December, the governor delinked the county case rate numbers because my daughter, who's a fourth grader, is allowed to be back at school this week. I'm also grateful that my son, who's an eighth grader, who is on IEP, has been able to go to school for limited hours and get the help that he needs. However, I know this is not the case for many students across the state of Minnesota. Right now, with secondary education, currently, school model is currently linked to the county case rate numbers. So local school boards and parents do not have the choice of how they can send their children to school. They are still stipulated by the mandates of the government and the governor's executive orders. Previously, if there were a flu or norovirus in a school, schools would work with the health department when cases became above a certain percentage rate. And in fact, in Farmington, there was a case where we had to close down a grade level because of norovirus. We've closed down schools a couple of days. But in that scenario, we would work with the health department and with agencies, and it would be a local control piece, and the decision would ultimately be made locally with our local school board and the superintendents, also with the parents involved as well. Just like on a snow day, the weather isn't the same across the state of Minnesota. In fact, it's not even the same across the county here in Dakota County. I know that. So we can't have a cookie cutter approach to how we handle education and the learning plans across the state with one fell swoop. As I look across the state, I know that we have an increasing achievement gap. Minnesota is known for the highest achievement gaps in the nation, and I shudder to think of how much higher that gap is becoming. I believe we're becoming further behind of our neighboring states that have been in school, that have the option to be in school if they chose to do so. We need to allow local school boards to make the decisions. Those local school boards are elected by parents and community members. They're the ears to the ground, and they talk to these members and reach out to them and allow them to make the best decision for their situation, their exact buildings and state and communities. Since March, this hasn't been allowed to happen. School boards haven't been able to make the decision. Parents reach out to them, but they have to respond back and let them know that our hands are tied due to the guidelines and the learning plan. Sure, school boards and school administrators are allowed to choose a more restrictive model without approval by the regional support teams. But if a school district were to choose a less restrictive model, that isn't allowed under the current order. So a key part of this bill is the last sentence, which permits advisement from the governor with school districts. That is something that we would like and something that has been missing. As guidelines continue to change and updates continue to happen, school districts and community members are left in the dark to know exactly what the plan is going to be for the given day, week, month, and even alone the year. But what I want to remember is that this bill is not asking to remove the governor and the state agencies from this decision. It's asking to make sure that they are part of the equation and involved to make an educated guess for what's best for their local communities and their local students. We need to be able to work together. We need to be able to make sure that the communities can listen to their parents and make the choice of what's best for their local schools. Let parents feel like their voices are heard. Let them know how much we do care about their kids, so that my students, the students across the entire state of Minnesota, can get back in the schools and allow them to have the choice to be educated in the learning model that suits their individual child best. We all know that children learn differently, and every district is different as well. I encourage you to support passage of Senate File 2, and I'm grateful for your time for allowing me to testify to the committee this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saucer. Both you and Ms. Monska are very well spoken and knowledgeable, and glad to have you in the committee today. So Senator Nelson, there are two other parents,
Correct.
Mr. Helmers and Tim. So we'll call on Mr. Helmers. I'm trying to find you on the screen right now. If you are on screen, you don't have to be, but
I'm on the screen. I can
I'm
see
sorry,
myself.
looking right at you. Okay. Oh, good for you. There you are. Thank you for speaking up, because then I could know where to look in my and the tiles here. Well, welcome to the committee, Mr. Helmers. Glad to have you here as a parent and as a person to be able to speak to us today. With that, go ahead with your testimony, Mr. Helmers.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Nelson, and committee members. My name is Thaddeus Helmers. I have two children in high school at Frazee Vergas ISD 23, which I am also a school board chair. I'm also a member of Let Them Learn Minnesota, which is becoming a parent voice. As a parent and a school board member, I support SF2, removing the governor's authority to authorize the commissioner of MDE to alter school schedules, curtail school activities, and order schools closed, because no one understands my district better than my district admin team, and my principals and my teachers and my staff, my board members, my students, my parents. They are the knowledgeable ones within my district, and that's who I rely on as a school board chair to make decisions. Blanket policies coming down during this are not conducive. They're not applicable to every single school district, all 336 of them across the state, and each of them having a different social and economic environment and just a general makeup of their population. I am confident that my district, I'm sure many others out there, could have developed a plan that was safe, equitable for all my learners, and would have kept students in the classroom, if parents allowed it, and continue to learn and continue to grow and flourish as they should have. Obviously, within consult, we had the RST, which was great, having those communications pieces into MDE, MDH. I thought it was grateful. It helped the districts. We had our incident command teams, ICT, that brought in all those key components within the district, which I mentioned, including the teachers, the staff, giving their input on how to conduct things. We should have been allowed to make those decisions. School board members are just that. We're elected officials that represent our community into the district. It's our responsibility to work with those members, district admin teams and whatnot, to make the decisions on how we operate within the laws and policies that are given to us. And obviously there's other impacts when closing schools or adjusting schedules that are beyond the school district that MDH, MDA are not going to see. My school district is 48% free and reduced. I have a lot of low-income families that I need to be concerned about, that if they're single-parent families, where is that student going? I have to think about that, and I do. And I talk to parents, I talk to students, and those are really big concerns. Now, I've heard a lot of talks, a lot of people say that schools are childcare. I disagree. There's a lot more to schools than just watching a student. There's a lot more behind it, and I think a lot of teachers would agree, and a lot of parents would agree. I also am confident that my district would have opened our high school in a less restrictive learning model this year, using in-person rather than what was directed through our RST. Because our only shortfall that we had during the entire school year thus far was teacher shortages which I think could have been corrected with a few funding changes at the beginning. So we would have actually not have been affected. We could have actually kept our schools based on county case counts, which we were allowed to use in-district case numbers, and we would have been fine. But we had to follow the guidance that was directed to us, not the guidance that us in our community wanted to do. I also support removing the governor's authority to prevent typical presence of students in school buildings. School buildings, we all know, provide more than education. It's a place where I know a lot of people say they do receive warm food. 48% of my students do their breakfast, that's their food. Their lunch, that's their food. Now, I know there is ways to deliver food, but there's more to that building. There's shelter, there's mentorship, there's life guidance, and there's those friendships, that sense of comfort that a lot of students get from that building and the people that work in there. And like I said, schools are more than just a building. Our youth will spend a large portion of their years within them, building a sense of safety and comfort within those walls and the people they work with, and removing that safety net, that support, that mentorship, that guidance at a moment's notice cause drastic effects to their mental health. We're seeing it. We've done polls in Let Them Learn, and it's astounding at what's occurring to this youth. And our district parents and communities need to choose. That's the bottom line. I think we're competent. I think we're capable. Coming down from the governor, micromanagement at its finest. I'm here, I'm elected, let me do my job. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me speak, Senator Nelson, for inviting me, and all committee members for listening to me speak today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helmers, and thank you for your service as a school board member and the work that you do. And I think that's representative of school boards across our state. In their care and their knowledge and their efforts on behalf of the people who have elected them. So it's very important value. Thank you for being here. And so now I'll go to Ms. Tim, if you want to. Hello, Ms. Tim. Welcome to the committee. Glad to have you here today. Go ahead and start presenting, and glad to have you here, Ms. Tim.
Great, thank you. I'm going to read off of my statement here just so that I don't misspeak and confuse everyone. So, good morning. My name is Kimberly Tim. My family resides in Olmsted County. I am a mom to 3 boys, and when I am not chasing after our 8, 6, and 3.5-year-old, I work as a clinical research associate for a small pharmaceutical company that has an interest in developing and refining oncology chemotherapies. Thank you for this opportunity today to speak about my experience and to express support for Bill SF2. I would like to take this time to speak about my 2 oldest sons who are currently enrolled in the Minnesota public school system and the struggle that they have had this year. I have a 2nd grader and a kindergartner, and they both have an established individualized education plan, or IEP. An IEP is generated by a team of staff within our district, led by a staff speech pathologist in my personal case. My boys require 8 and 9 sessions, respectively, of 20-minute meetings with a speech pathologist over a 1-month period. This equates to 160 and 180 minutes of speech therapy per month to work on their articulation disorder and to receive language services as an additional need. When Governor Walz shut down our schools in March last year, we were left scrambling. Our professional jobs did not stop, but our children's education almost certainly did. What was presented as a temporary closure has turned out to be more or less a long-term closure of public schools in my district. The services my children received while in school did not transfer over to a distance learning model well. When in person, my children received approximately 160 minutes each of speech therapy per month. But during the distant learning model, my children have received around 80 minutes at most per child per month. Over the 21 weeks of hybrid and distant learning models since March 2020, my children have lost almost 900 minutes of special education services. These services help my children in the communication areas that affect their ability to fully express needs and wants in the educational setting and social situations. After all this time, there is no plan to make up these minutes of missed services. My children are struggling to express themselves during this time of great stress and confusion, not only due to the pandemic, but also due to the tools that have not been afforded them by the State Department. In summary, when Governor Walz closed schools during his peacetime emergency authority, he set a dangerous precedent. Governor Walz removed the community's power to do what is best for our children. Governor Walz has sent the message that children learning in schools is not paramount. Because Governor Walz had the authority to close our schools, our district school board and teaching staff have been gripped with fear and have been against reopening school doors since March, despite overwhelming scientific evidence that shows school buildings and teaching children in them are not a source for disease spread. My district is not equipped to bridge learning outside of the classroom, nor is it equipped to keep up on the needs of children with special education plans. My community continues to fight for our voices to be heard by the school board and to open our schools. If Governor Walz had not had the authority to close our state schools, I feel that my children would be in a better place today. They would not have lost nearly a year of general education within the public school system. Governor Walz has made it extremely hard for my two children to learn. So with my family in mind, please vote in favor of Bill SF2. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tim, for your well-spoken comments. Appreciate it. And all of you have done an excellent job as far as the timing. Want to commend you on that. With that, Senator Nelson will proceed to the other testifiers we have here today. And members, they are on your agenda as well. All of this is on your agenda. And so our first, next testifier will be Deputy Commissioner Mueller from Minnesota Department of Education. Commissioner, proceed with your testimony.
Chair Kiffmeyer, members of committee, thank you very much for having us here today. My name is Heather Mueller, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Education. And we appreciate, again, having the opportunity to testify on Senate File 2. And I'd like to turn it over to my partner, Assistant Commissioner Dan Huff.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. Mr. Huff, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. My name is Dan Huff. I'm one of the assistant commissioners at the Minnesota Department of Health. And I will be working with Dr. Mueller in our testimony today. I will, with your permission, Madam Chair, turn it back over to Deputy Commissioner Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Huff. Deputy Commissioner Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Kiffmeyer. First, we would like to say that a couple of pieces that we want to be able to articulate. First and foremost, I really appreciate the Senator Nelson, you bringing up this conversation and allowing us to talk about, I think, the concerns that we're hearing, not only from you, but from our families and from our members of the school board who also presented today. And we are really appreciative of your continued conversations with us and partnerships in that. And we understand your frustration and we understand your concerns. As individuals, right? We're also parents. And not necessarily have a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school, and and have common understandings and experiences with you on a number of different places. And so I just appreciate your willingness to come in and share your story and your experiences as you're experiencing them, not only in a hybrid model or in a distance learning model. We do want to say that on behalf of the governor and commissioners Malcolm and Ricker, that we do believe that the approach taken to eliminate the governor's authority to engage in emergency management of school calendars and openings is not the approach that we would need to be taking during a pandemic. In the manner that it places all health and safety of our students, families, and educators at the forefront, while we're also striving to prioritize in-person learning. We believe that by eliminating this authority, it could have dramatic negative consequences for all types of future emergencies that our schools could face and could be confronted under the consistent leadership of a governor. We would like to briefly explain to you why the governor's exercise of this Chapter 12 emergency management authority pertaining to schools during the COVID-19 pandemic has been the correct approach to keep all of our students and families and educators safe and healthy while striving to prioritize in-person learning. And And we know that this is an authority that has not been utilized very often. And again, I understand the frustration that has been shared by Ms. Coffey, as she's talked about they not wanting to hear about it being a global pandemic, and us all being keenly aware of exactly where we are and how long we've been here. And so we just want to be able to articulate that this has not been used very often, and how is it that we've been able to utilize it now to continue to move forward. And so with that, Chair Kiffmeyer, I'd like to hand it back to my colleague, Assistant Commissioner Huff.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Mueller. And Mr. Huff, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. And first of all, thank you for the testifiers. I too am a parent. I have two teenagers. My son graduated last year. And so as you can imagine, his senior year was very different than what we had imagined it would be. My wife is also a school employee. She is a classroom aide in elementary. So I definitely relate on a personal level to everything that you have said. But I also want to address just more generally. So committee members, as you know, or may know, the emergency powers under Chapter 12 first came about during the civil defense era in fear of a nuclear war with the former Soviet Union. This chapter has evolved to allow for effective coordinated response to peacetime emergencies. For example, a train derailment resulting in a large ammonia spill, an active shooter, an emergency at one of our 2 nuclear power plants in the States, or during a pandemic of a highly infectious, incurable, and deadly virus. A centralized coordinated response is key to modern emergency management. The ability to quickly close schools, redirect students, or use school resources such as buses for evacuation are essential components of our state's emergency response. Now, while the current public health emergency may feel long and drawn out, we all want COVID to be done. Believe me, I definitely want it to be done. It is not over. In responding to this pandemic, as with any emergency or disaster, coordinated emergency response is key. 2020 has been Minnesota's deadliest year. Fortunately, our children have been mostly spared from the more severe impacts of this disease. However, this is not the case for too many Minnesotans. Specific demographic populations cannot be walled off or placed in a bubble from a highly infectious virus that is circulating widely in the community, such as SARS-CoV-2 is currently. What happens in our schools spills over to the rest of our community, and vice versa. At the same time, we know the impact of the pandemic has been great upon our schools, our teachers, our children, and our parents, like myself. Education is a key social determinant of health. Health has a significant influence on educational performance, and attainment and educational success powerfully predicts health status. Schools are also a key part of our public health system, providing health education and critical connections to screening and intervention for health problems. And while some students have thrived and learned during the pandemic, others are falling behind. An understanding of these impacts has been core to our work with schools over the past year and to the governor's response to this pandemic. Likewise, an understanding of how the virus is spreading in schools is crucial to our work. And now, while it is impossible to determine where every person is infected with the virus and how they were exposed, we do know that there are more elementary staff with confirmed cases than secondary staff, but there are more secondary students with confirmed cases than elementary students. About half of student cases in both elementary and secondary schools did attend while infectious. For staff, it's about 75% of confirmed cases attended while infectious. These data suggest that transmission potential exists at nearly equal proportions in both elementary and secondary grade levels for both staff and students. Now, we have heard clearly and consistently from our many stakeholders, superintendents, school nurses, teachers, families, who wanted to make sure that our approach to school operations was science-based and data-driven. Minnesota's Safe Learning Plan is based on the data and on the science, but it is also grounded in the understanding that each school community is unique, and it offers flexibility to help accommodate while also providing structure to support decision-making. Minnesota's Safe Learning Plan creates a partnership that maintains local decision-making while providing state technical support and creating a consistent, science-based set of core guidelines for safe learning. For example, county-level case data.
Mr. Huff?
Yes?
You have gone quite a bit beyond the combined time of 8 minutes for you and Ms. Mueller. So if you could just wrap it up to be fair to all the testifiers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies. I will just say that the governor's statutory authority to maintain school activity, to manage school activities and schedules in a pandemic are crucial to addressing the health concerns of our students, families, and educators in a consistent and coordinated manner. No community is an island when it comes to a highly infectious disease such as COVID. Mitigation strategies such as masking, social distancing, and cohorting have been found to be effective measures in addressing the pandemic. Without consistent direction, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huff. All right, with that, we will go to the next testifier. That is, I'm looking for you, Mr. Schneiderwind.
Yes.
There you are. It actually does help if you make a little noise because then your little file lights. So thank you very much. So Mr. Schneiderwind, you are the Executive Director of the Minnesota School Board Association. Would you proceed with your testimony, Mr. Schneiderwind?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity. We also want to thank Senator Nelson to hear our perspective on Senate File 2. I'm speaking today on behalf of MSBA, MASA, the Superintendent's Association, and the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. No one could have predicted what began almost 1 year ago. There certainly was no playbook on what to do. School boards, administrators, teachers had to do what has never been done, and they were not alone. The pandemic has impacted every person in our state, nationally and globally. From the outset, MSBA has advocated for board authority during the construction of the Safe Learning Plan in summer of 2020. We maintained that a one-size-fits-all solution to the health pandemic was not a workable solution. Yet, we knew the unpredictable nature and severity of the pandemic would not allow for 333 plus 160 charter schools independent strategies to ensure that our staff and students would be safe. While we think the world of our superintendents and our school boards, we also know that it was unrealistic for each independent district to understand the science and human impact of the virus. Thus, some trust and reliance needed to be placed within the Department of Health, Department of Education, and our regional and county public health officials. As a result, we have seen some flexibility and more recently adjustments within the Safe Learning Plan that allows for our school boards to determine the learning model. In short, our boards and administration understood that taking some precautions in the near term would result in a return to normal for our school districts quicker. Moreover, with an increasing number of vaccinations for our school staff and the guiding principle of staff and student safety, we are beginning to see some of the short-term pain yield more opportunities for our school districts and school boards. We are seeing positive steps with our school districts already in-person learning models and have a plan in place to progressively return their students to a traditional classroom where we know our students want to be. The process, however, has been bumpy and understandable frustrating. Our boards are elected to govern and hire a superintendent to lead and manage our school district. Their roles have temporarily changed during the pandemic, but we fully expect to return to normal governing and operational practices and improved learning opportunities. Our communities, small and large, look to them for leadership. Some of our school boards, administrators, and school staff have endured in communities that want their students to return, want all in distance learning, or something in between. This has been one of the most challenging aspects for our administrators and our school boards. Our boards and supers care deeply about these important learning opportunities, positive connections to our school communities, and to some degree have felt some loss of control, while at the same time staying in front of the state and federal guidance, legislation, and recommendations. We have always maintained that those closest to the issues make better decisions because they understand the impact and possible consequences of those decisions on their students and communities. However, with a pandemic of this scale and magnitude that has disrupted every sector of our society, some guidance from our state's health experts and executive branch is essential to ensure staff and student safety, as well as a healthy school building. We always stand ready for more discussions around greater flexibility on policy and funding matters that will demonstrate additional trust to our elected school boards who are charged with managing and governing their respective school districts. We look forward to the continued cooperation with the House, Senate leadership, and the governor to provide the best solution for our districts and students. Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Schneiderwind. Appreciate your testimony today. And members, we have now gone through our list of testifiers, and we do have some time to ask a question. So I'm looking for hands raised at this time, those who would like to ask a question. Senator Coran. Oh, well, Senator Fateh. Senator Coran, let's let Senator Fateh go first here. Senator Fateh.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I first want to say thank you to Senator Nelson for bringing this forward and highlighting her concerns, as well as the parents coming out and speaking their stories. I empathize with these parents, especially those who have students with special needs. Myself, I grew up with a sister that has special needs, and I understand that there are just some students in which online learning and distance learning is just not a working solution, right? But we are still in a situation where 3,000 Americans are dying every single day. And on top of that, we still don't know what the long-term effects are for those who contracted or who got COVID-19 and survived. So I think that we need to act as a collective. And I think that hundreds of school boards and school districts acting separately without any sort of coordination is not the best way to address this, especially a communicable disease. And this is a collective problem that requires a collective solution. So I will be voting against this bill, but since we all share the concern of parents not being able to go back to work or students not having their needs met, I think that, and I hope that what we're learning from this pandemic is that we as a Senate can come together in support of things like universal childcare and fully funding our public schools, right? But I understand
Senator
at the same
Fate,
time.
I'm going to remind you the subject of the bill.
Yes. Okay. Well, I understand at the same time that the Senate
Yeah.
moves pretty slowly, so maybe we can agree on the minimum, like wearing a mask. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Senator Fate. We have a bill before us today, Senate File 2. So we'll proceed. Senator Curran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all the testifiers and great testimony from parents living in the real world with real challenges. I'm lucky in my area. I actually have a middle school, or actually an entire school district, surveyed every single employee, every single member teacher. They only had 4 members express interest. 2 were masks and 2 were health issues. And so we could easily accommodate them. And I think, as my superintendent said, she was blessed. If we really were intended to go back to school, we wanted to go back safely. I have a superintendent who's created a plan, practicing the best practices, putting in the best health practices to keep them safe. They haven't had any significant outbreaks. They're back to school in the middle schools and teaching. What I also find interesting is I think in Minneapolis recently, only 7% of the teachers have a concern about going back to school because of the health issue or whatever the underlying issues are. If we really wanted to get back and our kids mattered, we'd be back teaching our children. I have a 13 or a 12-year-old granddaughter at my house. Remote learning is not working. 50% of Minnesotans don't have access to online learning in an internet or broadband perspective. I know what that's like in my very household today. And so it's not working. You designed the systems, you haven't made any accommodations, even in the technology and how those tools work from home, and the expectations that parents are now teaching and working at the same time. If you really wanted and cared about kids, they'd be in school today. I think there's a couple comments about special needs. What a horrible disservice to remove them from the classroom. The social interaction is important to their education processes, their mental health. We could go back to school today and it's been proven. What I'd like to ask our experts that we have on the line today is, my understanding, there are many private schools that have continued to remain open, practicing safe health practices recommended by the CDC. They've been open and I haven't seen one single headline of that there's super spreader events and that anybody's risks or lives are put in harm's way. And so needs have been accommodated, but there's health issues. And so we're doing that. They're masking, they're practicing all of the recommendations. So please provide me that where I missed the headlines, that the schools have become super spreader events for all of the private schools who have functioned through the entire pandemic. So please help me understand where those headlines are and why they're missing from our newspapers.
Deputy Commissioner Mueller or Assistant Commissioner Huff, which one of you would like to respond to that? Give me an indication. I see you have come on camera again. It looks like Assistant Commissioner Mr. Huff, you are on deck then to answer Senator Curran's question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, it's impossible for us to know how or who or when someone contracted the disease without doing whole genome sequencing on every single case, which we just don't have the capacity to do at the level of spread that we have. What we do know is this. We know that children have been infected. We know that both children who are very young, as well as all the way up through teenagers, so school-age children have been infected. We also know that staff, educators, bus drivers, et cetera, have been infected as well. Now, we do have some cases where we have seen spread from children impact families or other family members, sometimes with very tragic consequences. The basic premise of our public health science-driven approach is, how do we limit the spread of the disease? And we know that whenever we have people interact outside of their household pod, they have increased risk for spreading the disease. It's an infectious disease. That's how they work. The Safe Learning Plan really is what maintains a safe guideline.
Madam Chair, sorry,
Senator
Madam
Curran.
Chair.
Senator
Thank you,
Curran.
Madam Chair. Mr. Huff, could we focus on specifically the private schools? We have all of the other public schools have been closed for some time. In fact, the majority around the state. So if we could please please highlight the public schools in which you had indication that we've had a mass breakout of any sort, and that the contact tracing led back to the school. I understand it's limited, but I also understand it's limited in your ability to dictate where a teacher, where staff, or anybody migrates throughout the day. Walmart, all of our superstores, and everybody's behaviors. We're focusing on a school as if it's something unique and that everybody's been quarantined in a school environment, the teachers. That's not the case. So if we could, please focus on specifically private schools, and I'd like to know where those outbreaks have occurred. They've been open for months and practicing everything you just spoke about, the CDC recommendations. I'd like to know where that's occurring and why that can't occur in the public school system today.
Mr. Huff, Assistant Commissioner Huff, excuse me.
Madam Chair, Senator, we have had outbreaks in private schools. We have had outbreaks in public schools. I do not have those data on me, but I'm more than happy to provide you and your committee members with those data, specifically of which outbreaks we have had.
Thank you, Ms. Assistant Commissioner Huff, for that. Senator Howe, you are next. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, Assistant Commissioner Huff, you went through the emergency management stuff. I'm a former emergency manager, and you talk about a coordinated approach. That is true. Incident command system leads itself to that, but the piece that there's a couple of pieces that I don't understand that are missing. You know, the Homeland Security Emergency Manager Director Kelly, who what I thought would have been coordinating this approach, I have not heard from him at all through this pandemic. It seems like he has been muzzled or silenced. The other thing that I know about the incident command system, and when you're dealing with the emergency management, is that the state is there to assist the local control. They're there, the locals develop the plan, and the state is there to assist them. I don't see where that's happening here. That's my statement, but I would really like to hear from Ms. Matska on how she feels that this approach has helped, or her response to the commissioner's layout of how this all worked.
Ms. Monska, Senator Howe has a question for you. Right now, I think maybe her time was up. She probably had to go do some distance learning projects, maybe.
Well, that's too bad.
Yes, it is.
Well, maybe one of the other parents would like to chime in as far as how they feel that they're, and maybe one of the school board members would like to chime in on how they feel that their input into the school board association has worked out and their local control.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Helmers, would you like to? Oh, here's Ms. Monska. Looks like you went to sanitize your hands, so.
Well, was there a question for me? Because my son who's disabled was having a reaction. I had to put medicine on him.
Okay.
Was there a question or something that I missed?
I will have Senator Howe restate it for you again, Ms. Monska.
Ms. Monska,
I'll call on you to respond.
Ms. Monska, I was just wondering how your reaction to what has been put out there by the commissioners and the school board association on how this has played out as the local control, and what input you've been able to have on how this has been handled at for the students.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've had little input. Like I've called the Department of Ed, I've asked for help. I just don't feel like there's anybody, especially when all the schools were closed last March by the governor. I don't feel like there's anybody advocating for education. So even like today, the Department of Ed and Department of Health are allowed to speak. Only Department of Health speaks. I feel like nobody's speaking on behalf of the kids, like my kid who can't do distance learning. Like, you know, like there's like a balance. I'm an attorney. There's always a give and a take, a plaintiff and a defendant. Two people. There's three branches of government. There's tug. But when you put all of the power in one person, there's no tug. There's no give and take. And I don't even see the Department of Ed advocating for kids of color. We talk a lot about equity. Black kids are reading and their math rates, even before COVID, were like it was 60 something percent for whites and 20 something percent for blacks. They are dying during this. People who can't read and write, like my kid and any other kid who's struggling, they are absolutely dying. And I just don't see anybody, I understand there's health issues, but I don't see anybody at higher levels, including the Department of Ed. I just don't see it arguing for kids who are struggling. I don't see that give and take. And I think even for people on this committee who might be Democrats or whatever your position is on COVID, imagine if the governor was, it's good to have power at a local level, because imagine if all that centralized power was at a high level and you disagreed with the person, you didn't have any input. Imagine that. Imagine if that ever happens to change in Minnesota. So I think it's good that power be more local so that people have more of a voice. And I also think somebody needs to be fighting for education in this on a higher level, instead of just all of the centralized power being in the hands of the Department of Health. Who's arguing for the long-term consequences of having kids not learn? Who is on the higher levels? I don't see it. And I'm not saying it's not happening. I just haven't seen it. I've called the Department of Ed many times throughout all of this. So I don't know, did that answer your question?
Thank you, Ms. Monska. Senator Howe.
Very well, thank you. Well done.
Thank you, Ms. Monska. I appreciate your reply there. Mr. Helmers, I had gone to you and on Senator Howe's question. Would you like to weigh in on that, Mr. Helmers? You don't have to. I called you once before and wanted to give you to complete that.
It's okay. Yeah, with Coffee's remarks, that's exactly. There's a lot of parents who we're not seeing it. So as a school board chair, I too have sent many emails to MDE and MDH asking for clarification with learning plans, and I'm yet to receive those emails back. And I'm a board chair, so I'm pretty sure not too many parents are getting help. So that's troubling in itself. As far as the RSTs, yes, there is that. You know, I know Senator Fattah mentioned coordinated effort. Well, that's what that RST is actually doing. There's MDE rep, there's MDH rep, there's a county rep, there's an epidemiologist. So that is occurring, and it doesn't take the executive powers to do that. The ICT team, which is all my school staff, my nurses, which are actually licensed RNs, my district, we are that combined effort at our local level, doing what's best for our community and our people. That's bottom line. It's easy. I think it can be done. So at least for me, I'm a very, I guess, blunt, outspoken school board member, and we work well as a team and we get the job done. Like I said before, micromanagement, I'm capable, I'm competent, let us do it and we'll get the job done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Helmers. We'll go next to Senator Clausen, and then we'll have Senator Pratt. Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments. I think we have many historical examples of the need to implement emergency powers for a number of different reasons. I think a couple things in common during all these situations is that they require an immediate, coordinated, consistent response. And I think during this COVID situation, governor and state leaders have really relied upon medical and health communities for guidance and making decisions. It's not like the governor wakes up one day and says, well, I'm just going to close the schools. He's relying upon a lot of people to give him that guidance. We do have a safe learning plan that's been put out. It provides state guidelines for opening our schools, and it relies on the county COVID case rates. Schools have been using this. The Bloomington schools recently closed their early elementary grades because of transportation outbreak of COVID linked perhaps to students that I'm not sure of. District 196, the Rosemont Apple Valley Egan Public Schools, fourth largest district, this week voted their school board that they are going to go to hybrid learning for all secondary students in the district, and they've already opened their elementary grades. There's no question this has been a difficult time for parents and students. I think that there are students that have fallen behind. I'd just like to remind people in the governor's budget, he does provide funding for additional educational opportunities for students. And I think that we need to take advantage of that. So I hope that, we can recover from this. And I think there's some provisions in the governor's budget to help with that process. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. I did have a question for Assistant Commissioner Huff. Assistant Commissioner Huff, my question for you is, this is the first time these emergency powers have been used under this criteria, the interpretation that the governor has made for this kind of a virus. The statute is specific, tornadoes, floods, things like that were considered natural disasters, well understood. Now, this interpretation is the first time. And so the question I have for you, Assistant Commissioner, since we have type A, we have many viruses that come around, is your thought that the next time this will happen again, that will shut everything down for a year, almost a year?
Madam Chair, I guess two things. One is the courts have supported the governor's interpretation that a public health emergency does fall under Chapter 12. This is the worst public health emergency we've had in a century since the influenza pandemic of 1918. I cannot predict the future, but I know that as with any public emergency response, it's important that we're able to have a coordinated response, one that that follows the science and that allows us to protect all the residents of Minnesota. Now, we do have other outbreaks as opposed to a pandemic. Sometimes we have some epidemics, measles, mumps, influenza, and TB. All of these have impacted our schools. We always work collaboratively with our school districts, as we're doing now, to ensure
Mr. Assistant Commissioner Huff, we have others who want to answer. I appreciate the answer that you have given, but we have others who wish to proceed on other areas and have asked to speak. So we have another bill that we need to take care of in this committee as well. So thank you for your reply. With that, I will go to Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of thoughts, and I want to thank Ms. Monska for her, her very eloquent kind of summary of having one person making these decisions versus having, as she described earlier in her testimony, the ability to go to her school board and address her concerns. I served on a school board just as Ms. Sauser and Mr. Helmers have, and I can tell you that your board members are more accessible to the parents. They work with the teachers. I have never met a school board member who does not care about the students and the teachers and takes all that information into consideration. I was really kind of put off a little bit by Mr. Helmers, or I'm sorry, Mr. Huff's examples that, the governor needs these emergency powers in case there's an active shooter or a train derailment. My goodness, if we're waiting for the governor to do that versus our local school boards and knowing exactly, they're more nimble to react to those types of emergencies. I think that's really ridiculous. And the idea that we've seen more deaths in 2020 than any other year, but without digging into the data a little bit. Overall death rate has gone up 14, deaths have increased by 14%. Accidents have gone up 15%. Homicides have gone up 15%. Deaths in long-term care have gone up 26%, and all other residents have only gone up 11%. Does not talk to the fact that this is something that's broad. I was a little confused by Mr. Schneiderwin's testimony, and I guess I'd like his thoughts on this. Let's take, for example, we could use my district. There's an outbreak in Shakopee, and 20 miles away is the New Prague School District. Why should New Prague, where there's not an outbreak, have to react to something that's happening in Shakopee, which might be driven by some of the long-term care facilities? Isn't it kind of, you talked about the idea of the governor needing this power, but in some ways during your testimony, I thought you actually supported the idea that these decisions should be made by the local board. I know I was on the board when we were dealing with H1N1. I understand a very different virus, but the idea was that we didn't know about it at the time. We took a lot of precautions to keep our students and our staff safe, and we were able to hold school. So, Mr. Schneiderwin, I mean, when we talk about that, or we talk about, let's say we have an outbreak in Rochester, should Senator Howe's districts up by St. Cloud have to close? Help me out with that and where the School Boards Association is, because as you said, you do support local control. And as we've talked in the past on many times, I think we agree that the best decisions are made closest to the classroom.
Mr. Schneiderwind.
Madam Chair and Senator Pratt, and thanks for your question. I think the to your question related to two different communities, two different settings. I think that's one of the things that we have pushed on the department to take a closer look at, is the countywide data in many respects for us was not telling the true story. And so my understanding is that they have pivoted and now are looking at more localized data, which we see depending on where you live in the state, may be very low, and therefore we have districts moving into in-person or transitioning from hybrid to in-person. So I would agree with you. I mean, and I don't want to call the department out, but I think that that's part of their approach to this, is that they were going to be refined, narrow approaches to this, and they've made those adjustments, allowing more discretion for our boards to move in that. So I would contend too that while we are moving in direction to get more people in, I think most of our districts feel it's not fast enough. I mean, I think that they want to be able to say, while we have a roll-in strategy right now, I think the consensus among our members is that let's, rather than being caught by some language, allow us the flexibility to move into these elementary, middle school, high school experiences in a quicker event.
Thank you, Mr. Schneiderwind. Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I think that goes to the very heart of what we're talking about. And I saw Ms. Saucer kind of nodding through that, and maybe Ms. Saucer or Mr. Helmers can talk about, as Ms. Monska and Ms. Tim both talked about. They feel that their local school boards are accessible, and maybe talk about how you work with your teachers and your parents together. How maybe different buildings are able to be modified, or schedules modified to keep students and staff safe. And I'd like to hear from the school board members and the parents.
Thank you very much, Senator Pratt. I think we have time for Ms. Saucer, if you're on, that if you could just make a brief comment, then we will proceed to the closing for today. And Senator Osmek is next. So Ms. Saucer, have I talked enough to give you time to get on and
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Pratt. What's been difficult, as I alluded to my testimony, is school boards haven't been able to make those choices. I serve on the regional, I've been able to be part of the regional support team and the incident command team. And while there are guidelines and a give and take, due to the restrictions in the Minnesota guidelines set by the governor, if a school would like to do a less restrictive model, they are not able to. Our district took a lot of time planning. So in our hybrid mode, we haven't had any community spread at any point in time due to activities at a school building. Our district took a lot of time to have that planning, to have the students spaced out, to have a lot of separate pods and not as much crossing. And we would love to be able to be open more because we know what we're doing as best as we can. And we've been keeping kids and staff safe. And I would wager to say that going to school, the way things have been set up, especially in the hybrid model with our secondary students, has been safer than for staff and students to be out in the communities, as the students we know go to the coffee shops to learn or go out elsewhere. They can be safer in our districts, and we would like to have the control to make that choice.
Well, thank you, Ms. Saucer.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one quick comment.
Senator Pratt, just a moment. I'm going to come back to you.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Saucer. Very good comments. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think, what we've heard from the parents and the school board members is that the governor's really heavy-handed, one-size-fits-all approach has quashed any innovation that we've been able to have to meet the needs of students and meet the needs of our staff. And I fully support Senator Nelson's bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. With that, we'll go next. Senator Osmic, you had requested before. Senator Osmic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make some brief comments. Let's just start out at the beginning. There are a lot of individuals who are on the other side of the political aisle that believe that Republicans don't believe COVID exists. That is not true. We know it exists. The issue, Madam Chair, comes down to what is our response and how do we do the best job of protecting public health while still acknowledging the Constitution and the freedom and liberties that people in Minnesota expect. During the testimony, I heard analogies of the emergency powers being used to justify that this is sort of like an ammonia spill. Well, I have yet to figure out what an ammonia spill down in Hastings would have anything to do with somebody up in Roseville, or Duluth. It comes down to one size does not fit all. We had a member actually make the comment that we need to act as a collective. I've never heard a more Marxist comment on the Senate floor or within the Senate in my entire life. We are a representative republic. What Washington, D.C. has given us instructions and has given us as a nation directions, and we as individual states have the ability to work within them and come up with our solutions, which is the reason why we need to give our school districts the background and information and guidelines and let them make the decisions, because what happens in Hastings isn't the same as what happens in Roseville or Roseau or Duluth. We all know that the recovery rate for COVID, as much as it is not a good situation, is someplace between 97 and 99%. We were told to follow the science and follow the data. Well, at the beginning of this, the governor of the state of Minnesota said we were going to have 74,000 deaths. We haven't even hit 7,400 deaths. Under the current numbers, it's 6,200, and half of those are from people in long-term facilities. So what this, to bring this back to, this body is to determine from a state government standpoint, should school districts who are elected officials, just like you and me, who have election certificates, just like you and me, should be able to make the decisions that best protect their children, just like we do in St. Paul. One size does not fit all. I appreciate the school board members here defending their election certificates and defending what has been invested in them, the powers that have been invested in them by the ballot box, by the people. I appreciate them being here and standing up to a governor who doesn't want to let school boards be able to make the best decisions for their children. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Osmic. Senator Nelson, we are ready to have you do your closing remarks for the bill, and then we'll complete our other agenda item that we have.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members, for this thorough
Excuse
and
me, Senator Nelson. Senator Carlson just put his hand up. Senator Carlson, I'll give you 1 minute before Senator Nelson. You could have put your hand up earlier. You would have been on the list to call. You didn't. So I'll give you 1 minute now, and then I'm going to go to Senator Nelson.
Okay, just want to say I did have it up for quite a while, but I just want to make one little statement that, just so that we understand that the governor is dealing with, this is an international crisis. It's not just one city, one town, one school district. It's an international crisis. And also, he has made the decision back last year to do the closures and then has slowly opened up different things that school districts can do. And as Senator Clausen said, there are school districts that are making these independent decisions. They're not going back to the governor to make them. They're making them based on what their school boards and their superintendents want to do. That's what's happening in my school district is, they're not going back to the governor. And so to say that this is all onto the governor is a little bit of a misconception. So thank you. I just want to make that certainly clear that we have open school districts now.
Senator Osmek.
Only one question. What legislative action has the state Senate or the House of Representatives in the state of Minnesota taken for the rules that have been implemented upon the local jurisdictions? Name one bill that has passed where those rules have passed through the Senate or the House. The answer is none. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Senator Osmek and Senator Carlson. Senator Nelson, with that, we will go ahead and give you time to make closing remarks before we vote on your bill. Senator Nelson.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. And thank you to the committee for their thoughtful discussion. Clearly, this is a very important issue. I will just close briefly. The members made great closing remarks, but there's a couple things that this bill does not do. And I want to make sure this is clear on the public record. Number one, Senate File 2 is not about frustration, as some testifiers said. Yes, there's plenty of frustration, but Senate File 2 is about who best can make the decision about how and when to safely open schools. So it's about who is in the best position. And I've heard nearly all speak that it is local control has that. The second thing I want to note, this bill does not remove the governor's emergency powers. This is a very surgical, very tight change in the emergency powers in Chapter 12. It just specifically states that the governor cannot use a public emergency powers to close schools and alter their schedules. So it's a very surgical response. It is not removing executive powers. And then thirdly, this bill does not require that any school be open. It simply requires that local school boards make that decision. And the so-called local control that the governor has done with dialing back his dials, that is like, yes, you can do what you want as long as you agree with me. And so we have school boards that are not able to act upon the locally needed decisions. Lastly, I'll say, yes, we've learned a lot about the science, and we need to know what the science says. There's mounting evidence that schools pose minimal risk to spreading the virus. That includes the Reuters report. In 191 countries found no link between school reopenings and coronavirus surges. Axios looked at several studies, found schools are not COVID hotspots. The Atlantic magazine wrote that kids are not super spreaders. The New York Times reported on evidence that schools, especially elementary schools, are not stoking community transmission. The American Association of Pediatrics says the AAP strongly advocates for considerations that schools would have kids physically present. Now, the importance of in-person learning is well documented, and we've already seen evidence of the negative impacts because of the school closures. The last thing I will say is that, this is to the science, though, we have to make sure the scientific piece is out there. As it turns out, People are not equally, COVID is very serious. Let me get that straight. It is very serious. I don't want to minimize the risks, but we also need to know that it treats different populations differently. And people age 70 and up have a much higher chance of getting the disease than do young children. And in fact, in 2020, in the US, more children have died from the seasonal flu by a factor of 2 to 3 than from COVID. So we just have to make sure when we talk about science, we are looking at the most current and recent science. My closing comments, members, is the Minnesota Safe Learning Plan has been devastating. It has been devastating to our children, their learning. As the Sahan Journal said, the pandemic has had a devastating impact on communities of color in the St. Paul public schools. UNICEF has said we have lost a generation because of these school closures. So members, I thank you for your time. Madam Chair, I thank you for this thorough hearing, and I thank you for looking to move this bill forward.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. And so members, I appreciate the robust discussion, all our testifiers and members of the committee. I appreciate that very much. With that, I'll call on Senator Osmek to make the motion.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair, has the motion already been made for the bill itself, or do we need to make that motion also?
I move the bill, move the amendment, and so this is just the final motion.
Okay.
Recommend to pass and be referred, and this is going to
Education
Committee. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would request a roll call vote and have the results of the roll call vote be printed in the Senate Journal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. So that was a roll call request, roll call granted. Okay, for the motion, I'll move Senate File 354 be recommended to pass and to be referred to the Education Committee as amended. With that, members will proceed to a roll call vote and the clerk will take the roll. Mr. Neubauer, you can go ahead and take the roll.
Okay, thanks. Senator Kiffmeyer,
Aye.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Osmek,
Aye.
Senator Pratt,
Aye.
Senator Coran,
Aye.
Senator Clausen,
No.
Senator Fateh.
No.
Okay, members, there being 5 ayes and 3 nays, the bill is passed and we'll head to Education Committee. Thank you, Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee.
Okay, members, we have one more bill. It's going to be a little bit of a tight schedule, but I'll go ahead and hand over the gavel to Senator Howe to proceed with my bill. And Senator Howe, I'll just go ahead and move Senate File 354.
Well, thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. If you would like to present the bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Howe. So members, as is frequently done, we have had legislative members of commissions and boards. So in this case, I believe the Board of Cosmetology will be well served by adding adding legislative members to this particular bill. So as has been the custom in the past, we have the majority leader, minority leader in the Senate, my Speaker of the House and the House Minority Leader also make these appointments. And so this bill puts that language in place for us, establishes their staggered 4-year terms and some other technical things that is needed. But the essence of this bill does not change any of the existing members' duties, compensation, or terms of appointment. What this bill does is it adds 4 legislative members to the Board of Cosmetology. And I do not have any testifiers at this time, Senator Howe, nor has there been any response from the Board of Cosmetology asking to testify today as well. So that is my bill, Senator Chair Howe.
Thank you, Chair Kiffmeyer. Is there any questions from members? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor?
Mr. Chair, I will move.
Want closing remarks?
No, Senator, Mr. Chair, no. I just want to move that Senate File 354 be recommended to pass and be referred to general orders.
Well, thank you.
That's the motion.
Senator Kiffmeyer renews her motion to Senate File 354 be recommended to pass and placed on general orders. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
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 With that, Chair Kiffmeyer, your bill is on the way to general orders.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And so, members, we will close our committee hearing today. Thank you again for your participation on the important matters that come before this committee. Having no other business for this committee, we are adjourned.